Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in once again to another session of Sports Biz Camps. Today, very special guest as well. We have our 2K panelists, and I'm pretty sure we have tons of fans within the camp. Just boundless with endless questions and just really excited just to learn from people who are involved in the game and something that you guys may spend hours of time doing. So one by one, if our panelists wouldn't mind introducing themselves, and Lindsay, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today and moderating this panel with all of my colleagues. My name is Lindsay Ullman, and I lead business development for the NBA 2K League. And what that means is overseeing all of our marketing and partnerships, as well as our digital channels. I'm pass it on to Daniel.
Hey, everyone. Nice to be here with you all today. My name is Daniel Tsay. I head up league operations. So within that, overseeing things like the competition, our 2K game, and interacting with all the players. I'll toss it over to Graham.
Oh. Graham, you're on mute or your headphones aren't working.
Let me take them out.
There he is. Yep. You're good.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Graham Borden, also known as BFW, aka Black Frank White. I am the community ambassador for the 2K League. I help out in various departments. I help out with marketing and promotion with our influencer marketing. I also help out league ops and creating structure and rules for like our tournaments like 3v3 Showdown. I also help out broadcast. Shout out to my guy, Matt Arden, down there in the corner by doing a weekly show called BFW Live. And I'll swing it over to my counterpart, Matt, over there.
What's up, guys? Nice to be here. Thanks for having us. My name is Matt Arden, and I'm the head of content and media for the NBA 2K League. And what that means is I oversee any content we create and the broadcast that we put out as well for our live competitions.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks everyone for joining. I know on behalf of the entire 2K League, we're all excited to be here and passionate to be talking to you guys about why we love not just the 2K League, but sports and esports in general. And so today, I think what would be great is, Daniel, for those people who are in the room who don't know about 2K League, you've been with 2K League the longest. Talk to us about what the 2K League is and how we've evolved over the past 3 seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we're in the esports section of the day, but just that baseline right now, esports to us is professional, organized, competitive video gaming. And so what the NBA 2K League is an esports league that was created by the NBA and Take-Two Interactive, which makes NBA 2K the game. And it's a league. Think of it kind of like the NBA and how that runs. We have 23 teams in our league. 22 of them are NBA team affiliated. So a team like the Golden State Warriors has a team in the NBA 2K League called Warriors Gaming Squad. And then we have one team that's actually not NBA team affiliated. It's a traditional esports powerhouse called Gen G. So altogether, we have 23 teams. They're located all across, America in the local markets. Again, like the Warriors Gaming Squad's located in the Bay Area. Each team drafts 6 players in a normal draft process. All these teams, players try out in a global combine. And they get drafted to a team. They live in team housing provided by the team for 6 months. They get salaried, and they travel to New York City every 1 or 2 weeks traditionally to compete in this beautiful stage we've built in New York City. And we broadcast games there. We broadcast on Twitch, YouTube, this year ESPN2. And so that's what happens in a traditional year. This year's been a little bit different, with the pandemic. And so actually this year, everyone's been playing from their local markets, their apartments, or a team facility in their local market and playing from there. But the games have still been going on this season. It's been going great. And the only other thing I think I'd want to mention about our game, which is a little bit special, is it's 5v5. Each team drafted 6 players. It's 5 humans against 5 humans. Each one controls, a position on the court. You have 1 point guard, 1 shooting guard, et cetera, et cetera. And the way our game is set up is it's not the roster of the Golden State Warriors versus the roster of the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's not Steph Curry versus LeBron. We've actually created 8 stock characters for each position. So at the point guard position, You have a ball handling point guard. You have the option of choosing a sharpshooting point guard, 8 different combinations. And every game you can choose which of the 8 you want to be. So in total, there's 40 different characters you can choose from. And that's how a team kind of selects its composition game to game. And we play over the course of the season. It's been going on really good.
Awesome. Thank you. And so while we have the spotlight on you, I think it's first notable to mention that Daniel was just highlighted as one of 20 in his 20s in Crane. So you guys can go online and read a little bit more about Daniel and his career path. But while we're talking to you, fill us in. How did you get in this role? What does your day-to-day look like? What was your background to be positioned to lead league ops?
Yeah, so my background started very differently. I studied finance and economics. I thought I wanted to be in business, do Wall Street for the longest time. And so I started off my career actually doing investment banking for a few years, and decided I didn't want to stay in hardcore finance, but I still really liked the analytical points of the job. And so a position in the NBA strategy group actually opened up. The NBA strategy group is focused on anything that really grows revenue, grows fan engagement, different projects. And so, I was doing stuff like, international market prioritization, and esports. And so as part of like my job in doing esports and how the NBA could penetrate esports, the NBA 2K League was the idea. So to me, the NBA 2K League used to be an Excel model, building out a business model. And then it got kind of the green light. I really enjoyed helping the team think of the competitive structuring of the league. And eventually they kind of asked me to come on board to lead league operations. And I really believe in esports. I think it's a terrific industry that's really exciting right now. And so I hopped on board. And so I guess more specifically, my day-to-day role within league operations now, I think of it as 2 worlds. You have traditional league operations functions, things like scheduling and matchups, things like the competition rules, and different guidelines. And then the third of which is, again, creating this 2K League game. It's not the same one that you or I might play from the retail game. We create this special game that's special to only our league. That's one universe. And then the other world kind of within my purview is player operations. So in a sentence, it's really managing all the players. We have 138 of them. It starts with player identification, finding them all across the world, the most talented players, and bringing them into our league. But then, getting feedback from them. How can we make the league better? And just maintaining that dialogue with the players. Those are, I guess, my 2 main focuses as head of league operations.
Awesome. Thank you. Graham, I think it's safe to say community ambassador is probably one of the more unique professional positions that I've heard about. How did you get here? What's your background like?
That's a great question. I don't know if you want the long version or the short version, but I'll find
the good version, Graham.
Pretty much a few years ago when we got our consoles, PS4 and Xbox One, I started out looking for people to play the video game with. And that led me to streaming on Twitch and YouTube, which led me to finding a space where I can create competitive environment in the My Team mode of 2K. And I created a tournament called King of Kings, which further led me down to playing Pro-Am and understanding like the competitive scene for an archetype, for a player in that world. And combining those 2 worlds together led me to my love for the 2K League when that was announced. And thankfully, BD and Matt Arden saw my talent with the videos I created on First Shake, which was a debate show about the 2K League. And they brought me on to do a show called The Post Up, which led me here to where I'm at today, the community ambassador, which I think is the coolest job in the world. So.
What's your day-to-day like?
I take no credit for Graham's success. I take no credit for Graham's successful all by himself.
Graham, because you have the most, I get to work with all 3 of you very closely and I feel lucky to do that, but I think you have the most unique day-to-day and to work probably the oddest hours. So talk to me, like, what's your day like? You wake up, you're community ambassador.
it's interesting because my day normally ends when you guys are probably sleeping already, which is my day ends about 4 a.m. in the morning. I start out around 9:30, 10. And that's just because the community's up from 12 to 4 playing amateur scene games. I'm there to try to, player scout, player evaluation to help when DT has a question. He says, hey, Frank, what about this player? What do you know about him? I'm able to, answer that intelligently. My day-to-day is very unique. I help out league ops, I help out broadcast, I help out marketing. But it starts out with a lot of phone calls. I'm connecting with our influencers. That's, point one for me every day, making sure their needs are being met. They're happy in our partnership that we have with them, and we're working on ways to innovate them into the league. So, and vice versa. So that's, my day is a lot, but hopefully that's the short end of it.
I get notes from Graham at times that I've been asleep for approximately 7 hours. So now you can know the difference in Graham and I's role. All right, Matt, let's hear from you. I know something you and I have talked a lot about is not necessarily having a linear pathway to where you are now and jumping around and figuring out what you're passionate about. So would love to hear from you on your background.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I probably have, there's in some places I'm traditional, in some places I could be untraditional, but I have an English degree and a history minor, and started my career as a sportscaster. And it wasn't until a number of years into my career on air that I realized I really loved what was going on behind the camera. And I started a whole journey of learning how to write and direct under, some very key mentors in my career. And then for the 6 years prior to coming over to the 2K League, I was actually on the agency side working on commercial campaigns and building branded content for different brands. And so, to everyone's point, I think the one thing that's unique about esports is because it's so new, there can't possibly be a traditional route to it. I think the industry as a whole, and certainly the 2K League, we're just looking for really smart thinkers and people who have a really unique point of view. And I think if you look around our panel, you'll see that everyone comes from a different background, a different, educational structure, a different career prior to this. But, it's really just about, how you think and how you can integrate.
One thing I'd love to hear from all of you, and then Scott, will go to you for thanks everyone who's using the chat and Q&A portions. We'll make sure that we start to sprinkle in some of your questions throughout. Is, did you always know you wanted to work in sports or esports, and why?
I could take it first. For me, yes. That's why I created the competitive scene on the My Team side. I just believe that my future wasn't esports or sports in general. I'm just happy this opportunity came along with 2K and the NBA.
Yeah, for me, no. Again, I thought I was going to do finance. I was interning in, wealth management and banking, in my early years of college. So I thought I was going to do that path for the longest time. And I didn't even know I was going to do sports, frankly. I just wanted to work at a media and entertainment company. I thought that content was so much more interesting to me than finance. And so I just want to enter that more media entertainment space, which became the NBA's strategy group. And then within that, esports was just one of the many things that I worked on. And so for me, it's kind of just this nice, happy circumstances happen, but I've been a video gamer my entire life. It's been a passion of mine. Like sometimes during lunch break, I lived 2 minutes walking from my high school. I'd come back home during lunch and play video games. So I like being able to do video gaming now as a job is awesome, but I never thought it was going to end up this way.
Matt, what about you?
Same. I mean, when I started as the oldest member of the team, when I started, this wasn't even a thing. So, yeah, no, I didn't even know it was there. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned throughout the course of my entire career is that everything we're learning is happening so quickly and things are changing so quickly that everything today won't even be remotely the same in 5 years, let alone 10 or 20. So, no, I didn't even know this was going to be a thing.
It is kind of wild how quickly things change. I'll share something that I feel like many of you probably don't know, which is throughout college, I actually wanted to do the weather. So I wanted to work for the Weather Channel. I spent a number of classes, and we'll talk about skill set a little bit later, but I took a number of creative classes, as well as, learning composition, how to work a number of video editing programs and things like that. And came out of school and ended up on a totally different path. So I always tell people you never know where you're going to end, but I feel very fortunate to work in sports and esports because I feel like it's an opportunity to engage with people in a very authentic way. And sports really extends a number of different ways to engage with folks. So Scott, what questions do we have from some of our participants?
Gotcha. So Jeremy Gomez had asked, can someone give a quick overview of the 2K business model from a league standpoint?
Sure.
Daniel, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I could take a crack at it.
I hope so.
So, I mean, any business, pretty simply, you have your revenues and your expenses. And so I'll just run through quickly how the business is on the revenue side, which is similar in ways to traditional sports and also different because esports is a little different from sports. Traditionally in sports, a lot of your revenue comes from the content deals you do. The deal that the NBA has with ESPN and stuff like that is a huge portion of the revenues that a sports league has. You also make a lot of money from partnerships. So, whether or not it's with Bud Light, Gatorade, whatever, a lot of those partnership businesses bring in revenue. And then of course there's like ticketing and your events, when the, selling tickets and stuff like that. Esports is a little interesting because there's a curve on this business cycle where partnerships is actually the large percentage of how esports businesses make money right now. Content smaller so. Whereas I think in like the traditional sports world, content's probably responsible for, I don't know, well, someone should definitely fact check me on this, but maybe like 70% or something like that. It's flipped. In esports, your partnerships business is probably responsible for 50, 70% of your revenues. And then on the expenses side, it's the cost of running the business, right? So for us specifically, we pay for all the player salaries. Player costs are probably the biggest expense that we have. And then on top of that, we have, as number two, are the cost of production and events. So like our studio, all the brilliant people that Matt works with to put, this product into consumable content. That's probably, I think, the two most substantive expenses that I'd really think about.
Great. Yeah, I can speak to, I've worked at a team as well. I think the only difference there is that you would throw in ticket revenue. Ticket revenue and fan engagement opportunities are a huge opportunity on the team side. At the league side, Daniel's right. For a traditional league, content deals make up the majority of your revenue, followed closely behind by marketing partnerships. I think that model will likely follow in the esports space as well. But for right now, marketing partnerships is definitely the driving revenue force. So I kind of want to switch up our conversation a little bit to talk about specific skill sets. So our audience today, they're in high school. They're thinking about what classes should I be taking? What should I do on my free time? How do I set myself up for success, whether that's going to college, whether that's interning, whether it's helping out. So Matt, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what sort of advice, what skills would you suggest someone look into?
I think it would probably first depend on, just your general interest, right? If you want to do what Lindsay or Daniel or Graham or me do, all four of us have very unique sort of different approaches. I would say from the creative side, from the broadcast side, when I was in high school, I started volunteering at newspapers and at TV stations. And then in college, I spent most of my time really in the extracurricular space, like with the school newspaper and the local TV station. And then seeking internships at TV stations in Virginia and, where I grew up. Because I think work experience is important, particularly in a growing field like this, where you're just not going to find esports or 2K, in a textbook in high school or college. You can get some of the principles, certainly. We all work off of business principles that can be learned, but experience. I'm a big fan of experience. I'm a big fan of putting yourself out there and volunteering for work and shadowing individuals. I get a lot of high school and college kids that ask to shadow me for a day or, ask for advice, and we're all happy to mentor when we have the time, because there's just sort of, I don't, to answer your question more directly, I don't think there's a proper route. I don't think there's an expected route. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to do a certain things, because all of us approached it very differently, but you do have to work harder than anybody else. The one constant across the board is working harder and putting yourself in positions to learn.
I totally agree with that. I think the more that you can get a breadth of experience trying different things, it's so hard to know early on what you want to do. I don't know that today I could wake up and tell you 15 years from now where I hope that I am. And so I think the more that you can experience different types of roles and do it in many of the ways that Matt talked about, interning, helping out, just working at these local businesses. Yeah. I mean, it's a great way to learn about different jobs, and it may be something that you never would have thought.
I'll say this too. Sorry. I just want to say this too. If you're lucky and love what you do, you'll do something work-wise for like the next 50 or 55 years. Like that don't forget about like winning the lottery and like sailing off on a boat, which we'd all love to do. But if you're lucky, you'll live a life where you love what you're doing and you'll be inspired by it, and you'll work a really, really long time. So if you work for the next 50 years, what you do in this year or the next year, it won't matter as much in the aggregate, right? You just have to keep your eyes open and keep working hard, because like all of us just said on the panel, none of us even knew this was a career 3 years ago. So it's just about hard work.
Totally agree. And Graham, I don't think you shared with everyone what your job was prior to this. So I'd love your perspective, especially with, we're talking about esports. Are there specific skills that are needed and are very helpful when trying to enter esports? And then talk to us about what you did before you were a community ambassador.
Yeah, so it's very interesting. Before I was the community ambassador, I worked at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center on the Upper East Side. For 15 years, I was patient liaison. So without her noise, I was a patient liaison on the floor called Special Suite. So pretty much if you were a person with cancer who had a significant amount of money, we took care of you on that floor. It was more of a private experience, similar to what it would be like VIP in a hotel, right? You have your own concierge, and they help you with your experience, help you from anything to scheduling your PET scan or CAT scan to helping you get your medication that you need at the time you need it. So it's very unique how I got into this space. Like I said, I kind of stumbled upon content creation. I've been a gamer all my life. It wasn't until, I had a necessity to find people to play with that brought me to where I'm at today. So my path here is not necessarily, hey, I went to college and I took courses in this and it got me here. Now, I do have my degree, and I do believe college is necessary. And I'll tell you why. For me, I had a minor in sociology when I went to Syracuse, and that helped me understand people and how to interact with people. That carried over to where I'm at today. And for me to do influencer marketing, I had to have the understanding of how to interact with different groups of people on a very large level. And Lindsay can tell you this, everybody's personality is not the same, Some people are going to love you, some people are going to hate you, but you have to stay fast in your beliefs and understanding of how to work with people to get the best possible product for your team. I hope that answers the question.
It does. No, I think you and Daniel have two of the more interesting backgrounds, I think, when you look at how you get into esports. And I think the fact that you came from the healthcare industry is a great example of, at any point in your career, there's an opportunity to shift, and you can take all these different experiences and find out how you make them applicable in a new role. And I think that's something Daniel talked a little bit about too. Daniel, what do you think? Any specific skills you would recommend if you were talking to yourself in high school?
I think transferable, like what you said at the end there is what I think resonates and how I thought about the early years of my job was just getting really transferable skills, because you really don't know necessarily where you're going to end up. And so for me, two things stick out to me is, and this is kind of my personality, but one would be communication. I think that's good for anyone. Like, in order to succeed, I think to be effective, you have to be a good communicator. You don't necessarily need to be the smartest person in the room, but you need to be able to convince people of your ideas and do it eloquently. And so within that, I would say there's different ways to communicate. One of the ways I personally communicate, just because I'm a little more analytically minded, is I really try to perfect in the first couple years of my career how to use tools like Excel and PowerPoint, which sound really nerdy, but it's really helped me display facts and figures and illustrate my points in a cohesive manner to when I'm trying to get my point across. And so I think that's something that's applicable in esports, in investment banking, in a strategy group, or wherever, is just developing some really transferable skills like communication, or some type of analytical productivity tools or stuff like that. It's really served me well in my different stations of my career.
Awesome. Scott, any questions that we want to throw at our panelists here from the audience?
Gotcha. We actually had like 3 come in that last minute. But,
Perfect.
There's one. What inspired you to hop into the 2K League community as a career? I believe that person is asking, like, as a career, what inspired you to go into esports?
Is that for me? I can take it.
I mean, it's open to anyone.
Like I said, what inspired me to get into esports was there was a need. There was a void that wasn't filled in the competitive scene for my team originally. And it's similar to I see someone talking about, but it's more of a pay-to-play mode. But seeing that our best content creators couldn't play against their fans and vice versa, I said, okay, what can we do to bridge that gap? So I created a tournament series called Kings of Kings that did extremely well. It had, some of the biggest names in the influencer space right now for 2K participate and be able to play against their fans for every day for a month straight. And that success led me to have a more hunger to dig deeper into esports in terms of 2K, which led me here. So that's how I got involved.
And for me, because I used to be in more like consulting type of roles, whether that's in strategy, it's advising operational business leaders on how we think that they should run their business or stuff like that. Back in banking, it's advising clients. This is my first hop into actually operationalizing a business. And for me, I chose esports as the big time to take that leap of faith, because I really believe in the industry. I think anytime you're thinking about a career, you kind of want to think about the macro, how is it doing as a large, broader industry? And when you look at esports and the amount of eyeballs, the amount of viewership that it's generating, I think it's a really hot space. It's a little bit of the wild, wild west, again, in terms of its business cycle, as well as just general maturity, but especially its business cycle. It's clearly a young industry. And so to me, that's an opportunity to really carve out your own niche and your own territory within that space. So for me, esports, clearly a passion, really strong business tendencies look going forward, and then an opportunity to really rise up professionally in an area where there aren't too many people in it yet.
I would say the same thing. I think it was just such an interesting growth industry. I spent most of my career in sports or in entertainment, in creative. And this was just the next level of really interesting stories to tell that haven't been told yet. So for me as a content creator, to tell brand new stories, that was just such a unique proposition that very few people in my position ever get to do, is to tell a story the first time. So that was just so wildly exciting for me to get in on the ground floor of something and tell its story and tell the players' stories, that it was too good to pass up. Plus the NBA is just it's just awesome. I mean, look, at the end of the day, you're working for one of the best leagues globally, let alone in North America. It's one of the most forward-thinking, brightest, most fun places to work. And so the ability to, get into the NBA was just really too much to pass up.
An awesome segue to my next question that I like to ask. This is like a question that I like to ask my friends. I just think it's an interesting one, which is like, what gets you out of bed in the morning? Like, what is it about your job, Matt? Is it that you get to tell new stories? I mean, is it the fact that the community is always on, Graham, at 4 a.m.? Like, what is it that makes you excited to come to work every single day?
That's a great question. I remember Matt asked me one time, he said, hey, how does it feel to do what you dream about doing every day? And my answer is, it's amazing. Like I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would be here at this point in my life. I always knew that it's something I wanted to do, but when the opportunity presented itself, I jumped at it, and I'm grateful to be where I'm at today. So what motivates me is innovation, being able to get up every day and create something new that's already new and make it more dynamic, make it more engaging for our fans and community.
I love that. I share a very similar sentiment. Daniel or Matt, anything you would add?
Yeah, I mean, I think Graham took, my first one of just being able to create newness every day. I'm in a bunch of group chats with my friends discussing how sports leagues should rearrange themselves for better competition and stuff like that. And for that to be my job in league operations is a blessing. I think the first moment where I was truly, it made me stop of like, wow, we're really lucky to be doing this, was actually in year one. Every player that signs up to be in the league has an application. They have to try out, show their skills and all that, but they also need to do an application where they tell us about themselves. And so in my role, I had to read every single person's application that was kind of near that finish line. And you hear the stories about where our players are coming from, tough backgrounds, the lack of opportunities that they've had in their lives and what this would mean to them. And then to be able to call them and tell them that they have a spot in the league, that they have some financial security, they're going to have free housing, and it's doing something they love to do. We had people that first year, we called every single player, and we had a lot of people crying on the phone. I had people crying, and just to see that level of impact was the first moment where I was like, whoa, this isn't just fun for me. It's not just a cool business we're building, but it's actually changing people's lives. Not to get too corny, but like I really didn't think about that until I read these stories and saw that emotion come out of our players.
So true. I mean, I think for me personally, once I realized I didn't actually care about the weather, that it just is what it is. I've always been interested in innovation. And I think that one of the things that's scariest about esports, but also most exciting, is this idea of like, we're really changing the industry, and it's totally nascent and it's still really new. And something that I have found really interesting working in esports versus traditional sports is this idea of, and this everyone on the phone can, I think, relate with this. If we want to make a change, we make a change, and we can change something starting next week. And that professionally is not something that you always have the opportunity to do. So this opportunity to think quick on your feet, make changes, and implement them is something that I have found incredibly professionally rewarding, at least for me. So coming up in sports and esports, I think mentorship and having people that you can talk to and share your experiences with is incredibly important. I would love to hear from each of you guys on someone who you feel like provided either tough or good direction, and why that person's advice was so valuable.
I can jump in and start. I had two. When I was coming up in the game, there was a show called the George Michael Sports Machine, which was this famous syndicated sports show before everyone had cable at home and could get Sports Center. There were these regional shows that would sometimes go global, and George Michael Sports Machine was run out of NBC Washington in Washington, D.C. He was a famous Washington, D.C. sportscaster. And I got the opportunity to work for him for 2 years, which was incredible to get experience from one of the most famous names in sports. And he, the biggest thing he prepared me for was that the world wasn't going to be easy once I got out there, right? There weren't a lot of favors. And, I grew up without any means. I grew up in a broken home, very little money. I was, doing my own laundry at the age of 5. I grew up kind of, without some means. And so I knew I was going to have to carve my own path. And so being able to find mentors and be able to find people in the industry that could, leak me information or give me advice or sort of, give me some clues along the way was vitally important. And the biggest one after that was when I was at Turner Sports. The guy who still runs, creative at Turner Sports is a guy named Craig Berry, who sort of took me under his wing and taught me everything he knows as part of this creative group that I'd been asked to be a part of. And he was tough on us. And it was all because I think the biggest thing that mentors have brought to my career and what I've tried to do as a mentor back is just explain that it can be difficult when you're 18 and get out of high school, or if you're 22 and get out of college, or whatever your particular path is, that the world becomes very real very quickly. And it some of the, they use the phrase kid gloves. I don't know if that's still a phrase. I'm getting older, aren't I? I'm looking at Lindsay and being like, I'm not connecting with them at all, am I?
Can you follow-up question, please define kid gloves?
Yeah. It's hard out there. I mean, look, there's a million other people out there trying to, grab that job or grab that opportunity or chase that opportunity. And so some of the tough love I got from my mentors was tough in the moment, but it made sense moving forward because you really have to make your own breaks sometimes. And learning to be self-sufficient and learning to be tough and learning to take a couple of losses along the path because the losses are just as valuable as the wins in the long run. Learning to take all of that in and process it and use it to your advantage. Mentors can be a huge help for that because sometimes it's just nice to have somebody to talk to.
Graham, what about you?
Sorry, I'm answering some of the questions in the Q&A. Just repeat the question for me.
Graham is doing his job as the community ambassador. Talk to us about someone who was a mentor for you and, what sort of advice particularly helped you, especially as you think about making such a big change so far into your career, right? You had a great job. You knew what your Monday through Friday looked like. And then you're going to take this change and you're going to come work with all of us crazy folks and be community ambassador in a new role. Did anyone give you good advice around that time?
Yes. It's a group of gentlemen that all have league jobs that we call ourselves the 2K brothers. And they helped me make this decision. It was a tough one because, like I said, I came from, a field where there's job security, job stability. I knew what my day was. I knew that even in the worst of times when we have a pandemic, I have a job. Like healthcare, you're always gonna have a job. So it was a tremendous decision for me to make the switch to follow my dream. But the guidance of that group, which is, and I'll kind of give some of the names, is OG King Kerr. He's the head coach and general manager of Nets Gaming Crew. Famous enough, also known as Derek Franklin. He's the head coach and general manager of Heat Check Gaming. Also, Rico Finesse, the head coach of Celtics Crossover Gaming. And, of course, my closest friend, Jelani Mitchell, a.k.a. Khan from Jazz Gaming. That group of people, they kind of steered me in the right direction because my original goal was to be a head coach or general manager in the 2K League. When the opportunity presented itself to be the community ambassador, it was them saying, hey, Frank, I know this is what you want, but I think you're best serve the community and the league in this role. I had to sit down and really look at it and say, okay, yes, I have the ability to innovate and provide influencer marketing on a high level to the league. So that's what made me make the jump. It was sometimes in life you get people that come across and help you make that right decision. And I'm super grateful to that group for giving me that advice and pushing me in the right direction because it's been the greatest decision I've ever made.
Oh, I love to hear that. Daniel, anything you would add?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've had a couple folks I'd consider mentors. I think one poignant moment that's sticks out for me was, back in banking, having a mentor who was also my manager. And, he's great in the sense of, you want to emulate different ways your mentor is excellent. They do the right things, say the right things. They're super smart. But what made me kind of rethink about how I was going to work was him actually giving me some really big criticism. And that was the first time I ever really got a slap in the face. We had different end of the year conversations of our performance, and he's always said good things. You work hard, you're bright, stuff like that. But I'd really push him on something that's actionable. And finally, he kind of was like, frankly, I don't trust you in a client meeting. And that was, it's a big slap in the face. It's a really brutal thing to say to a young professional, but it is exactly what I needed to hear, because I could understand why he'd say that. And it really made me elevate my game. And I think when you're young, you want to have people push you really hard, because that's how you're going to get better than your competition. It's okay to be not as good as maybe you're supposed to be when you're young. You're young, you're still learning. So for me, it was really, really valuable to get that kick in the rear really early on and have it be so honest. So I think with mentors, just have someone that's going to hold you accountable, even if it's really brutal.
I love that. When I wrote this question, I thought about that quite a bit too. And some of the first people who came to mind were actually high school coaches of mine. For anyone out there who plays a sport, and talk about tough love, their job is to get you better at whatever you're doing. And that tough love, I think, is what I would attribute today to my work ethic. It has made me incredibly comfortable taking criticism, to your point, because it's so important in being able to grow, is to take that criticism and figure out, like, the answer isn't always I hate this person now. That's probably a good piece of feedback, and how do I take that and build from that? Scott, do we have any questions you want to throw out?
Certainly. So Lucas Riley had asked, what type of entry-level positions or internships would you recommend a student to look for if they have a love for esports and want to do hard work and see it grow? Gotcha. And that's open to anyone.
So I can take at least a little, and then I'll throw it to Daniel, who I saw just unmuted himself. I think it's being willing to work on a little bit of everything. I know for us, when we look for interns, it can range from folks who are interested on the business side. I've had people come and work under me who are interested in marketing partnerships, or digital or marketing, and just how does paid media work, all the way to opportunities to help out on league ops side, like Daniel. And so I think I personally feel like it's being open to experiencing a number of different opportunities. I don't know, Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think about the different areas within esports, and some, like, for example, I think for content and production, and I think Matt is obviously way more knowledgeable about me. I think that there's a lot of opportunities in esports to produce a little piece of content, whether it's a graphic or a hype video, show that to an esports team and show them the potential of what you can do. So I think there really is a void of talent, and you can really showcase your skills there. For league operations, I think that it's a little bit like you can try and ask if you can scout, you could provide great analytics to a team and analyze stats as a fan and show that to the league. That's something that's something I've seen and really respect. So I think a little bit of it is taking things into your own hands and doing the work and showing them, because I do think that there are definitely opportunities within esports. It is so young. You just got to kind of put yourself out there.
That is true. As Graham can attest, we have people constantly reaching out to us on Twitter who are graphic designers who create videos that they want to make sure Matt sees, who do deeper analytics just because they're passionate and they want to share their work. And I personally am always really impressed by those people. And there's definitely instances where we found some of those folks and brought them on as a graphic designer for the league. And I mean, some of these people live quite literally all over the world. So it's kind of interesting, especially with esports. The opportunity doesn't necessarily have to be in your backyard like a traditional internship would. All right, guys, I have 2 more questions for everyone. The first one is, think of yourself in high school. Before everyone joined, we were kind of all joking about AIM and screen names. You're going to give yourself some advice, knowing what you know now about career path, about what's ahead of you in, say, the next 10 years coming out of high school. What sort of advice would you give yourself? Matt, let's start with you.
The biggest advice I would say is one I already said, which is just make a promise to yourself to work really hard. Just look to your left and look to your right and work harder than the folks sitting next to you. And the other is to just take it easy, like calm down a little bit. I think now there's a lot of pressure on high school and college students to succeed at an early age. And there's a ton of just pressure to, come out winning on day one. And it's not all that necessary right away. I think you need to find time to relax, find time to enjoy your hobbies, find time to enjoy your friends and your family. Because like I said before, life is really long if you're lucky, and so is your career. And all those other things are really, really important. And so take a beat, take a breath. Everything doesn't have to happen on day one. When I started my career as a sportscaster, I was also delivering flowers part-time to make ends meet, because it's not all about the money. It's not all about day one signing bonuses and getting paid. There's just greater focuses in life, and to just calm down, take a breath, and enjoy life too.
Great advice. Graham, what about you?
I think the biggest thing for me in high school is create the reality that you want 10 years from now. So I think the thing if I had to tell myself high school Graham, I would say, hey, look, remember, I already outwork everyone, but having understanding of time management and how to work your day to be successful. So if you're in high school and you're playing sports, and like I played sports, I was in sports all year round, so I didn't get home until like 8, 9 o'clock. I still was able to get my homework done, but I was able to do that because of time management, having a schedule. So I always tell myself, but it never carried over to college, which is hilarious. But be very mindful of your time, because minutes, seconds, and hours do matter. The second thing I would tell myself is don't feel obligated to go to a big name university. Like Matt went to Virginia Tech. I forget what Lindsay went out for, or Daniel, but I know Virginia Tech. I went to Syracuse. So it's automatic, like Big East rivalry. But the biggest thing is, if you're not financially able to go to a big university, it is okay to go to a community college, get your 2-year degree, and then transfer into a 4-year school. Because one thing I learned is education is education. It doesn't matter if it says Syracuse on it or it says SCC on it. It's the understanding of learning a skill set and learning how to work your job. And as long as you go to an institution that's very high in that, you'll get the same education you would at a prestigious, high-paying institution.
Totally agree. Great point.
Yeah, I agree with both what Matt and Graham had said. Those are both really good takeaways. The only one I would add on, I think, is, really invest in your relationships with people and try to be as nice as you can. Because even in, my short career, I've seen that come full circle with people that I went to college with that are still in finance, ask me about esports because their company is doing something in gaming, or I found opportunity getting my jobs directly because of relationship. I mean, that's actually how my 2 first jobs came, was a direct relationship from a friend. So I would say relationships are everything, and really try to nurture those. They're super valuable. I know it's hard to keep in touch sometimes, but it's really valuable just personally and professionally, and then try to be nice to everyone, because you never know when you're going to be interacting with them again. So that'd be mine.
I love that advice. If I can piggyback on that too, I think one thing, I said it in the chat over here, but to Daniel's point, his point is really, really, really a good point. And 2 things. One is try to be a champion for everybody in your work group, right? So Don't be the person that's only reaching out and keeping in touch with someone in your LinkedIn because you need a job or you need something. Be celebrating all their victories so that the 10th or 12th time you reach out to somebody and finally ask, hey, I could use a break, or I might be looking for a gig, then you're the person that's always been in their life, supporting them and being a champion for your friends' successes. And you're not just always the one asking for a job. And secondly, when you do reach out to people on LinkedIn, I can't stress this enough, don't randomly just click connect. LinkedIn is becoming the new Facebook where you just randomly friend everybody, which is fine. But look, give a reason. Every time I connect with somebody on LinkedIn, hey, so-and-so, we met at this thing, or I love the work you're doing. I'm inspired by it. Would just love to be connected to you. Give them a note, give them a reason to remember your name, and give them a reason to click accept. I've probably got 250, connection requests in LinkedIn just sitting there pending right now because I, for the life of me, can't figure out how I know this person.
Good piece of advice. I think for me, if I was thinking back on high school, one thing I would tell myself is not to be scared to try something new. This idea of like, well, here's my skill set. I'm looking at a job. I have 50% of it. Like, don't be scared to go for it. And I think we don't celebrate that enough and that's just a common theme for many people, but don't be scared to try something totally new. And, that's part of the fun and challenge of growing in your career, and something that you'll see through internships as well as once you start your career. Scott, any final questions we want to take from the audience before my last question for these folks?
Gotcha. There are no new questions, but I would like you guys to touch on networking advice, since these are like a lot of high schoolers going into the collegiate world, or maybe even college students who may be taking a peep. Would you guys mind on touching on networking a little bit?
Yeah, I can start that conversation. I think part of how I got to my role was networking. I created a platform that, the managing director, Brendan Downey, who happened to be watching, but I would never have known that he was a fan of my platform until I went to an event that GC held, which I was invited to from my good friend, because we became friends because we networked with each other to help create a better, more fluid amateur scene in the prime level. So networking, never burn a bridge, always cross it. That's the best advice I can give you. There's no bad person in the world to learn from. There's no bad person in the world to get information from. There's lessons in everything.
Yeah, I love that, Graham. And I think, for myself, when I've done networking, I've had to go to networking sessions where it's you and 10 others awkwardly crowding people to talk to them. And I think that's an experience a lot of us have done. Who's going to come up with the best question? And it's awkward. But I have found success in those instances, really when you do your research and show that you've done the work. Like, I think if there's very rote questions, like boring questions that you can ask, which immediately the person receiving it will kind of, their eyes will gloss over, something like that. But if you show that you've done the research into something that the business is doing, something recent that's happened, just show that you care a little bit, I think they'll react a lot better. So anytime going into a networking event or an interview, if the question you're asking is found on, most common 25 questions to ask, it's probably not the best one. You should really dive in one layer deeper to show some specificity that shows that you care a little more.
Great point. Matt, I think your LinkedIn point was a good one. What else?
I would say don't be afraid to put yourself out there. It's walk across the room or and introduce yourself to somebody. Don't be afraid. Don't be shy. To Graham's point, part of crossing that bridge is also putting yourself out there. And I've made some really great connections with people just by taking a chance. And look, let's say 50% of the people you reach out to ignore you or don't, keep in touch with you. That's still 50% who did. So, you got to put yourself out there and take a chance and introduce yourself to someone, because you don't know how it could change your life, but you don't know how you're going to change their life either. You're also a very powerful being on this planet, and your influence matters, and you might change someone else's life by putting yourself into their world. So don't be afraid to connect with I don't want to get too hippie on you, but don't be afraid to connect with your fellow humans out there. It's important. And I think now more than ever, if you even look at our group, right? We're all learning from each other. None of us come from the same background. None of us knew each other from another world. We all look and sound a little different, and those are all beautiful things. And so I think, you know, putting yourself out there and meeting some new folks is really, really important.
I'll take networking from the other side. I would say, you know, as you guys continue to grow and take on responsibilities, pay it forward. Like, take some of these calls from people who reach out, who are interested. You know, sometimes taking 30 minutes out of your day, it's very easy once you're working a job or you're in college and you're busy and you want to do things with your friends and maybe you're playing a sport and you want to work on projects. Like, pay it forward. It's so important. It makes all the difference in the world, and it's a good reminder of where you came from. Because to Matt's point, 50% of people ignore you, 50% of people are going to take that call. And I think all of us have really benefited from those 50% of people who took the call or took the email in that instance. So my last question for everyone, that we're going to end on a fun one. I want to hear everybody's gamer tag and why. Graham, you already kind of gave us a little peek, but tell us more about Black Frank White.
Yes, everybody thinks there's two versions to the story. Some people think it's because it's after the famous rapper Christopher Wallace, also known as Biggie Smalls. But there's two sides to that coin. So it just depends what room I'm in and what story I tell, but I'll give you both. So one is that it is because, you know, Christopher Wallace, he's from New York. He's considered one of the greatest rappers of all time. The other story is it's a movie from many, many years ago with Christopher Walken, Wesley Snipes, Lawrence Fishburne, called King of New York. And Christopher Walken was the main character, and his name was Francis White. So that's where you get the Frank White from. And he was the king of New York. So when I was playing video games, I said, well, I think I'm the king of gaming in New York. So I'm the king of gaming of New York. So that's where you get Black Frank White, because, you know, he was Frank White. I'm Black Frank White. So that's where you get it from. That's the story of my gamer tag.
I love it. I love it. Matt, what about you?
Mine's not very exciting. It used to be ATL Hokie, and now it's NYC Hokie, because I lived in Atlanta, and now I live in New York City, and I went to Virginia Tech. So being from Virginia Tech is really important to me. I loved my college experience, and living in New York was a dream of mine. As you know, I like I said, I grew up in Virginia without many means, and you know, never thought I'd live in a big city like New York City and work in media. So living in New York was always a big dream of mine since I was a kid. So it's very simply NYC Hokie.
Proud Hokie until come college football season.
I'm sure we can get into virtual sports. We'll have to ramp up Virginia Tech's esports.
Daniel, let's hear about your tag.
So I have two. The one that I've created more recently is Fancy Banana. And Matt was here for the creation of that. About I want to say a year and a half ago, Matt and I and a couple others went to Hong Kong to have an online tryout of all the Asia Pacific players that could come to Hong Kong and try it in front of us. And during our layover going home, we had to stop at Seoul, in the Seoul International Airport. The Super Bowl was happening at the same time. So we ran over to the lounge for 30 minutes to catch the Super Bowl. But it was the fanciest Delta lounge ever. I mean, they had gourmet food. They had water bottles for you. I mean, it was just fancy. It was the first time I've ever been there. And on top of that, all their bananas were individually packaged, with cellophane wrapper. And you had to open the wrapper and then open the banana. And when I came back, I told Matt, look, they have fancy bananas here. And we just thought that was a great name. And so I adopted it as my favorite.
We also hadn't slept in about 40 hours. So
Jet lag's an amazing thing.
Yeah, that's right.
But it gave us fancy banana, so I'm thankful for that. Scott, anything else?
No, I believe that concludes our session. I want to thank all of our panelists. Thank you guys for coming out and definitely answering a few questions. If you guys wouldn't mind dropping any links to, your website or your LinkedIn even, just to help people get engaged. And to all of our attendees, please make sure if you do reach out LinkedIn that you send a note primarily. Also, we have another session next, the UCF College just pretty much making sure you guys know like what to expect when you go into college, and maybe what you can do now to prepare yourself so forth. But thank you guys. If you guys don't have anything else, that concludes our session.
Thanks so much for having us, guys. Pleasure.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thanks
so much.
guys.
Awesome. See you guys. Thank you.